Thrown out at 8 months pregnant, abandoned by the people she called family. This is where most stories end. But not this one. This is about a woman who was underestimated, silenced, and dismissed, until she reclaims her voice, her identity, and her future. If you've ever been made to feel not enough, this story will remind you exactly who you are.
A sharp tearing sound cut through the quiet room. Margaret Prescott put the document down, her eyes facing the table. "One bag," she announced. "Take your things and go." Claire was 8 months pregnant. She had called this house her home for 3 years. She ate at the table every morning. She had trusted them like her own family. Her husband stood frozen in the doorway, staring down at the floor. That is when she saw the suitcase, already packed and waiting. They had planned this entire thing. She turned around and left, but they had no idea what she was truly capable of. Her father had spent 30 years building a $14 billion trust fund for a moment just like this, and that moment was finally here. There's a lesson in the story. The people who try to ruin your life are often the ones who give you the power to make it better. A father's silent protection built over decades is a secret strength that nobody can see. If this story feels familiar, if you've ever been pushed out of a place you called home, you've come to the right channel. Claire's story is for anyone who was told they were not good enough, right before they proved they were everything. If you enjoy tales about people finding their own power, please click the like button. It might seem like a small thing to you, but it gives our channel enormous support. Please comment and share if you've ever seen the true side of someone you thought you knew. We appreciate your stories and read all of them. Share this video with anyone who needs to be reminded of their own strength today. And if you are new to our channel, we are so glad you are here. Please subscribe and turn on notifications to see every new story. We post a new one each week. You will not want to miss how this story ends. The first sound she noticed was a crisp rip of paper. A silver letter opener sliced an envelope as cold as the Prescott house itself. Margaret Prescott laid the letter down, looking away. The morning sun glinted on her eyeglasses. Her posture was perfect. Her blouse was free of any wrinkles. Her face was blank, as if she were just throwing away old furniture. "We had the guest house prepared," she said, "but considering everything, it is better if you leave the grounds entirely." Claire Whitmore Prescott was standing in the dining room she had used for the last 3 years. Her ankles were swollen and hurt. Her back had been aching for 6 straight weeks. She was in her husband's giant sweatshirt, the only thing that could still fit her. She was 8 months pregnant. At first, her words did not make any sense. "I'm sorry," Claire was able to say. "Can you please say that one more time?" Margaret finally raised her head. Her face was not unkind. It was something much worse. It was the look of a person closing a business deal they had planned for a long time. "The Prescott family has certain standards," Margaret said, folding her hands neatly. "We should have been more clear about those when Donovan brought you home. Our attorney has checked. The prenuptial agreement cannot be broken." Claire's hand automatically went to her belly, a move to protect her unborn baby. "I'm 8 months pregnant," Claire whispered, as if she had to remind them. It was a fact that they seemed to be ignoring. "I am aware, my dear," Margaret said. "That is exactly why you have to go now before the baby comes. It will be a cleaner break this way." "Cleaner?" The word hit Claire like a slap. She looked around the room. She saw Garrett Prescott in a chair, hidden behind a newspaper. She saw the sunlight coming through the huge windows. She saw the beautiful Persian rug with its deep red and blue colors that she had always liked. And then she looked back to the doorway. Donovan was still there. He had been there the whole time. He was just standing in silence. He was studying the pattern on the carpet with deep focus. He looked like a man who could not look at the other people in the room. Claire took out her phone. She locked it and unlocked it over and over. She fought the urge to say his name in her special way, the way that had always made him turn to her for 3 years. She had always believed until this very second that he would always come when she called. She put her phone away. "Donovan," she said, her voice firm. He coughed and straightened his sleeve, his eyes fixed on the wall. "Claire, my mother believes that I'm having your child." Her words were simple and direct. Her voice was steady. The room went completely still. The only noise was the loud ticking of a clock on the fireplace. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Garrett rustled his newspaper, which he was not reading. The car is waiting outside to take you wherever you need to go, Margaret said. She was already leaving the room, as if the discussion was over. I asked Rosita to pack a few of your things. One bag, the lawyers will handle the rest. Just one bag. Claire was 8 months pregnant, and her life was now packed into a single suitcase. She stood alone in the room a little longer. She was hoping, holding on to a small bit of hope that someone would protest. She hoped someone would say this was all wrong, that she was part of the family, but the silence stretched on. She walked to the front door. The suitcase was there. A black suitcase on the polished marble floor, next to the umbrella stand and the fresh flowers Margaret had delivered on Monday. The bag felt much heavier than she expected. She was surprised that this small detail was the thing that finally broke her. It was not their hurtful words, or Margaret's cold look, or even Donovan acting like a stranger. It was the heavy weight of that bag that showed her the truth. It had been packed with a lot of thought. This was not a quick decision, it was a careful plan. She took the handle and walked out the front door. A black car with dark windows was running in the driveway. The driver was a man she did not know. They had thought of that too, so there would be no familiar face to offer comfort. She got in the back seat and the door clicked shut behind her. Through the tinted glass, she looked back at the Prescott mansion. She watched it for a long, quiet moment. The door never opened. No one came out. She took out her phone and called the one person she could truly count on. Renee answered immediately. Hey you, Renee's voice was happy and normal, just like any other Thursday. Renee, Claire's voice cracked, I really need you. The way she spoke said everything. There was a short pause. Where are you? Renee asked. I am in a car. They called it for me. Claire put her hand against the cool window. They just made me leave. Another pause, then Renee's voice came back, very calm and steady. It was the voice she used when she was furious. Claire, are you okay? I do not know, Claire said. I'm on my way to you. Stay on the phone with me. Claire held the phone tight. She saw the Prescott property disappear behind tall, perfect hedges. In the mirror, the large front gates closed. She put a hand on her belly. The baby gave 3 strong kicks. I know, Claire thought. I feel you, little one. She kept her hand pressed where her baby was moving. She did not cry. It was not the time for tears. A new feeling was building inside her, and it was faster than sadness. Sadness is slow. It takes time to really feel it. This was different. This was the feeling of your world shattering while you try to hold the pieces. She remembered the morning she found out she was pregnant. She sat on the bathroom floor with the positive test, feeling both scared and happy. Donovan had found her there. He got down on his knees next to her. He had said, Claire, this is the most wonderful thing that has ever happened to us. And she had believed him. She had been so sure that he meant it with his whole heart. Renee was still on the phone. Claire could hear her friend's steady, comforting voice. She held on to that sound like it was a railing in an earthquake. Okay, Renee was saying, here is what we are going to do. You're coming right to my apartment. You will sit on my sofa and put your feet up because I know your ankles have been bothering you. You will tell me everything from the beginning and I will just listen. And then when you're finished, I will finally tell you what I've wanted to say for the last 2 years. What is that? Claire asked. Not now, Renee answered. Just get here first. Claire closed her eyes. She leaned her head back against the cool leather. Okay, she whispered. I'm on my way. Outside, the city was a blur. People were walking down the sidewalk. A man was drinking coffee. A woman was pushing a stroller. A dog waited calmly at a corner. For everyone else in the world, it was a normal day. She felt like she was watching a life she could no longer be a part of. Renee's apartment smelled like vanilla and her favorite fabric softener. It was cozy and warm, and every surface had something on it. A book, a little plant, a picture frame, a half-empty mug. This was a real home, a place where a person lived, not a cold museum. Claire collapsed onto the sofa as Renee set a footstool before her. In the kitchen, the sounds of tea being prepared filled the silence. Renee was busying her hands, delaying the inevitable talk. Claire knew her best friend well enough to understand what the clinking mugs meant. How long has his mother had it out for you? Renee finally asked, her tone steady. She does not dislike me, Claire started, but the words faltered. An image of Margaret's primly folded hands at dinner flashed in her mind. She does not dislike me. In their eyes, I did not exist. I was just the girl Donovan brought home from a less impressive part of Connecticut. Renee returned with the tea, placing a mug in Claire's hands. She settled into an armchair across from her, her gaze direct and unwavering, something Claire had always admired. "So what did Donovan have to say for himself?" Renee asked. Claire cupped her hands around the mug, letting the warmth seep in. "Nothing," she answered. "Absolutely nothing. He sent a text message an hour after I left." She pulled out her phone. "Claire, I am so sorry about tonight. Can we talk once things have calmed down a bit?" Renee's eyes darted from the phone to Claire's face. "Calm down a bit?" Renee echoed, her voice rising in disbelief. "Calm down," Claire repeated, her own voice completely flat. "You're 8 months pregnant with his child?" "I'm aware," Claire said softly, "and I am currently on your couch." "It is a pull-out bed," Renee corrected gently. "The one with that awful metal bar I have meant to fix for 18 months. She set her mug down. "And he needs things to calm down." "He said calm down," Claire clarified, almost to herself. She paused. "I do not even know if there is a difference." "The difference is he is acting like this mess is just a patch of bad weather, not a hurricane he helped create." Claire did not answer, continuing her silent stare into the mug. Later that night, sleep was impossible. She lay in Renee's home office, where a desk had been shoved aside for the pull-out bed. The mattress's metal bar pressed sharply into her lower back. She shifted left, then right, but found no comfort. Inside her, baby Eleanor made a slow, rolling turn, a motion like someone stirring in a dream. The ceiling was a blank canvas above her. The room was still, but for the city's distant murmur and the low hum of the refrigerator next door. Claire's thoughts drifted back to how she and Donovan first met at an art gallery. He had materialized beside her, saying something surprisingly insightful about the painting she was viewing. At that moment, she felt she had met a man of real depth, someone who truly saw the world. She then combed through 3 years of memories, like the time his mother Margaret criticized her Christmas dinner. Donovan had offered a small laugh, which Claire dismissed as meaningless, or the gala where Margaret introduced her as Donovan's wife, after a long, awkward hesitation. Claire had told herself it was just Margaret's peculiar way. She recalled a conversation from 6 months ago. Margaret had suggested that a woman from Claire's background might find motherhood exceptionally difficult. Claire had brushed it off. For 3 years, she had been brushing everything off. "My God," she thought, "what a fool I've been. The red flags were everywhere. Every single one had been right there, and she had actively chosen to ignore them. Seeing them would have required action. She was so committed to the life she thought she was building that she picked the beautiful lie over the ugly truth every time. She'd been so certain that she had married a kind and honorable man. Her entire world was built on that single belief. At 6 in the morning, she called Donovan. He picked up on the fourth ring, his voice thick with sleep. She realized immediately he had slept well, while she had not slept at all. "Claire," he mumbled, "I need you to tell me what you think happened," she said. "Not the version your mother created. I need your version." A long silence stretched on. She could hear him breathing, carefully choosing his next words. "The family has concerns about the future of our marriage," he said. The line was so polished and rehearsed, it felt like a physical blow. "Say that one more time," she said softly. "There are concerns." "Donovan," she said, her voice perfectly steady. "That sounds like something a lawyer would write. Please just talk to me." Another silence, longer this time. "My father was involved in a business deal with your family a long time ago," he finally admitted. His voice was quieter now, less practiced, and she could almost hear shame in it. "Something went bad. My parents believe our marriage was a mistake because of that history." "A business deal?" Claire's hand tightened on the phone. "What kind of business deal was it?" "I do not know all the specifics." "What deal, Donovan?" He was silent. "Claire, I think you need to speak with your mother," he said at last. "There are aspects of your father's estate I was not aware of until recently. Aspects of my family's—" "Your family what?" He left the sentence hanging in the air. The quiet between them felt vast and measurable, and in that quiet she finally understood. He knew something critical and had known it all along. Now that the Prescotts were done with her, she was being discarded. I am not sad, she realized with sudden clarity. I am furious. I will be talking to my mother, she said, her voice perfectly calm. And then I'm going to learn everything your family knows about my father. After that, you and I are going to have a very different kind of conversation. She hung up. Then she called her mom. Diane Whitmore answered on the first ring as if she'd been sitting by the phone, waiting. Claire, she said. Her voice was strained, like someone who'd been holding their breath for far too long. It was the sound of a person waiting for a call they always knew would come. Mom, Claire said, what don't I know about Dad's estate? A long pause followed. You need to come home, Diane said. There are things at Key I should have told you years ago. Things your father wanted me to wait to tell you until the time was right. I'm not losing my mind, Claire thought. There was always something they were hiding. I am on my way, Claire stated. She pushed herself off the uncomfortable bed, found her shoes, and grabbed her coat. She went to Renee's bedroom and knocked lightly. I have to go to my mom's house, she said through the door. I will explain everything later. Do you want me to drive you? Renee's voice was instantly alert, as if she had been awake and waiting too. No, Claire replied. I need to do this alone. She stepped out into the crisp morning air. The city was slowly coming to life under a pale gray sky. She got in her car, aimed it toward Connecticut, and drove toward the secret her father had left behind. The house in Fairfield was unchanged. White siding, black shutters, and the massive oak in the front yard she had climbed every summer until she was 12. The bird feeder her father, Owen Whitmore, had installed on the fence when she was 9 was still there. He had refilled it every Sunday morning, never once forgetting. Claire paused in the driveway for a moment, just looking at the house. She remembered countless ordinary Saturday mornings inside. There would be pancakes, the kitchen radio would be on, and her dad would be at the table with his newspaper, a simple mug, and a plain watch. He had a quiet, unassuming presence. She never had a single reason to think her father was anything but the simple man he appeared to be. She walked into the house. Diane was waiting in the kitchen. Coffee was already brewed. 2 mugs were out, and a plate of butter cookies from the local bakery sat on the table. Claire could tell her mother had rehearsed this talk. It was obvious from the very start. That preparation revealed just how long her mother had waited for this day. They sat opposite each other at the kitchen table. Diane reached out, taking both of Claire's hands. Your father was not the man you thought he was, Diane stated. Claire looked at her mother, waiting for her to explain. He was an extremely private man. You know that. You knew him well. Diane's hands tightened around Claire's. What you never knew, what he made me promise not to reveal, was the true nature of what he built. What did he build, Mom? Diane took a very deep breath. Your father was a consultant. Yes, that part was true, but consulting was only the public face of it. For more than 30 years, he was building something else entirely. He made smart investments in early technology, real estate, and markets no one else saw. He created private equity firms that became incredibly powerful. Diane paused. He never wanted any attention. He did not seek credit for his work. He built everything to remain hidden from the world. He had good reasons for it. What were his reasons? He was betrayed terribly when he was 29. Diane explained that his partner stole his creation. He lost nearly everything he had. It took him 15 years just to get back on his feet. She took another deep breath. He was determined you would never experience anything like that. The kitchen was completely silent. The refrigerator gave off its low, steady hum. A tiny bird landed on the feeder just outside the window. Mom, Claire said, her voice was strong and clear. How much are we talking about? Diane shut her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them. $14 billion, she said, held in a trust that is yours alone. You will receive it on your 29th birthday. Nothing else in the kitchen moved. The refrigerator kept humming. The small bird was still at the feeder. The cookies were on a plate in the middle of the table. $14 billion. Please say that number again, Claire requested. $14 billion, Claire, in a protected trust under your name only. He excluded me because he said I was provided for and he wanted you to have. Diane's voice trembled slightly. She focused on the two words he had used: absolute independence. And those words repeated in her head. She saw her father, Owen Whitmore, a man with simple needs. He wore a basic watch, drove an American-made car, and read the newspaper on his porch every night with a cup of tea. On every one of her birthdays, he told her she was his greatest achievement. Claire got to her feet. She moved slowly, being 8 months pregnant, using the table for support. She walked to the back door, opened it, and stepped out onto the porch. For a while, she simply took in the cool morning air. She looked at the bird feeder and imagined Owen Whitmore filling it every Sunday. It was a small, quiet habit he did without any fuss, just a simple job that needed doing. He did it every single week. She realized he must have known this could happen. Maybe not the Prescotts by name, but someone who would show up when she was most vulnerable. Someone who thought they deserved what she had, before she even knew about it. He had built her a way out. For 30 years, he was making an escape for her, keeping it secret so she could grow up normally. He did not want her to feel that burden until she had no other choice. She placed a hand on her belly. Your grandfather, she whispered to her baby, was a very complicated man. She took one more deep breath of the cool, fresh air. She let it out slowly. Claire returned inside, sat down, and picked up her coffee mug, looking at her mother. I need you to tell me absolutely everything, she said. Over the next 2 hours, Diane laid it all out. She talked about Sylvia Holloway, the one lawyer Owen trusted with his life, who had protected the trust for 4 years, waiting for Claire's phone call. She explained how the trust was built to block every possible attack. He'd even made a legal defense to stop anyone from marrying Claire just to access the funds. Diane said the trust would be entirely hers on her 29th birthday, which was now just 6 weeks away. Then memories began to surface, sharp and unwanted, as new information changed her past. She remembered the first time Donovan's family asked about her background. She recalled Margaret's gentle questions about what Owen did for a living, and how happy Margaret seemed when Claire told her that her father had passed away. She thought about Garrett Prescott asking at dinner once if she still talked to her father's old business partners, and she remembered Donovan quickly ending a phone call when she entered a room, claiming it was just business contacts from his father, just his father's contacts. None of it seemed strange at the time. She had not thought about it twice. Mom, she said, picking her words carefully, did the Prescotts know anything about this trust? The look on her mother's face said it all. Sylvia is convinced they did, Diane replied quietly. We have records showing someone tried to get your father's estate information about 4.5 years ago. That was even before you and Donovan ever met. 4.5 years before he walked up to her in that art gallery. He did not fall for her at an art show. He was sent to acquire her. She was an asset. The truth settled in, not with rage or tears, but with a cold, clear certainty. She was worth more than that. And her father knew it. He spent 30 years ensuring that if a day like this ever came, she would have all the power she needed to leave with her dignity intact. I need to call Sylvia Holloway, Claire announced. Her voice was even and calm. It was the type of calm that comes from knowing exactly what you have to do. She's been waiting for you to call, Diane said, for the last 4 years. Sylvia Holloway's office was nothing like Claire had pictured. For a $14 billion trust, she expected a huge building. She imagined marble lobbies, a secretary with a phone headset, and walls lined with fancy degrees. Instead, Sylvia's office was in a simple brownstone in Hartford. It was 3 steps up from the street, with a brass knocker on a dark green front door. The inside had dark wood paneling, shelves full of books, and smelled of coffee and old paper. The quiet was profound, the kind you find where serious work gets done without any need for praise. Sylvia was 62, with silver hair, and was dressed in a navy blue suit. She had the calm confidence of a person who has held a huge secret for years and knows how to manage its importance. She stood up when Claire entered, and she looked at her with an expression Claire did not recognize. Then she knew what it was. It was pure relief. You have your father's eyes, Sylvia said. They both sat down. They were offered tea, but both declined. Claire placed her hands flat on the desk and said, I need you to explain everything to me. And so Sylvia started. Owen Whitmore began creating his fortune in his mid-30s, 15 years after a betrayal had almost ruined him. He worked in complete secrecy, finding tech companies before anyone else, and buying land in areas people were overlooking. He made private partnerships with structures so complex they were nearly impossible to trace unless you knew the exact path. Sylvia said he was not just fortunate, he was unbelievably patient and could see value where no one else could. He understood exactly how markets behaved, and he was happy to wait a decade for a plan to succeed. Why did he never tell me about any of this? Claire asked. He had two reasons, Sylvia replied, folding her hands on her desk. First, he did not want that knowledge to affect the person you grew into. He wanted you to create your own life and your own identity. He was concerned the money would stop you from taking the chances that allow a person to grow. She stopped for a second. Second, he was afraid of this exact situation. He knew that if people knew about the money when you were young, you would have become a target. He was right, Claire thought to herself. He was absolutely right. The Prescotts, she said. We cannot prove it was them, Sylvia said cautiously. But we do have records of a law firm tied to Prescott Holdings trying to locate your father's estate. Those requests were made about 4.5 years ago. She slid a file open for Claire to see. That was around 6 months before Donovan Prescott went to the art gallery where he met you for the first time. The room became very still. He was never in love with me, Claire realized. I was a business deal. The thought was just a cold, simple fact. What does the trust say about my marriage? She asked. Sylvia turned a page in the document. The trust becomes entirely yours on your 29th birthday, no matter your marital status. If you're married when the assets transfer, your husband has zero legal claim to any part of it. Your father was very clear about that. 3 different lawyers had reviewed every word to make it ironclad. He knew a man like Donovan would appear. He was ready for this exact moment. Correct. Sylvia took a breath. Your father was fooled one time, and he made sure it would never happen again. Not to himself, and certainly not to you. Claire glanced from the folder back to Sylvia. There's more, isn't there? She asked. I can just feel that something is missing. A faint smile appeared on Sylvia's face. You're just like him. He could always tell when I was holding back too. She produced a second folder that was much thicker. Your father gave you more than just wealth, Sylvia stated. He gave you control. She spun the folder around and slid it forward. Claire's eyes fell on the top page. She read it once, then she read it again, slowly. He was a part owner of Prescott Holdings, she said, her voice a whisper of disbelief. 19%, Sylvia confirmed. He bought it quietly over 11 years using 3 different holding companies. He started 2 years after that business deal destroyed him, a deal we now think was engineered by Garrett Prescott's old firm. Claire needed a moment to process everything. The Prescotts ruined her father when he was just 29. He had nothing left. He took 15 years to recover. Then, without telling a soul, he spent 11 years buying a piece of their company. This was a 30-year plan. He never showed his cards because the final hand was all that mattered. With a 19% stake, Claire realized, I get a seat on the Prescott's board of directors. Sylvia agreed. Their board meeting is next month. I've already contacted 2 other shareholders who are very unhappy with the Prescott leadership. With your 19%, the 3 of us control 41%. It was more than enough to demand a vote on the company's management. It was enough to force real change and prove the Prescotts made a terrible mistake. The Prescotts did not just fail to steal from Claire Whitmore, they'd given her the keys to their own kingdom. Back at Renee's apartment, Claire was buzzing with too much energy to be still. The table was tiny, so she laid out all the documents from Sylvia on the kitchen floor. She sorted them by year, then by the type of asset, then by the business name. Renee sat on the sofa, eating cereal and just staring with wide eyes. Your dad had a piece of this app, Renee pointed, the one I use all the time, and this news company and 3 Colorado hotels, plus a shipping business in Ohio. Renee put her bowl down. Claire, I had no idea your father was... I know, Renee. It was 17 minutes past 2 in the morning. A dull ache started in Claire's back. She was 8 months pregnant, sitting on the floor, mapping out the secret fortune of a man who drove a domestic car, wore a plain watch, and filled a bird feeder on Sundays. A laugh suddenly bubbled out of her. She could not stop it. It was a deep laugh that had been trapped inside her for a very long time. Renee looked over, a little worried. Are you having some sort of meltdown? I'm not sure, Claire answered. This might be a breakthrough. She looked at the papers spread out like a treasure map. $14 billion and 19% of the Prescott Company. The trust was designed to be almost impossible to break, and her birthday was only 6 weeks away. I just need to make it until then, she whispered. I just have to get through this. The Prescotts acted faster than Claire had imagined. Only 3 days after her meeting with Sylvia, a legal document arrived from Donovan's lawyer. It was a petition to annul their marriage. They were claiming fraud, alleging that Claire had hidden her wealth from them. The nerve of it was shocking. Renee read the notice twice, her expression sharp with disgust. She placed the paper on the table. They're saying you committed fraud. Yes, Claire said. The family obsessed with my inheritance is accusing me of fraud when I never even knew about the $14 billion. You have to admit it is a bold strategy, Claire said. Her voice was steady and calm. It was the only way she could speak about it without breaking down. But inside, a quiet terror grew that she'd not told Renee about, a fear she barely admitted to herself. Saying it out loud would make it feel too real. She was so scared. Her 29th birthday was in 37 days. She was 8 months pregnant on a couch with a metal bar in her back. She had a fortune she could not access, a lawyer she hardly knew, and a husband who answered news of a baby with a lawsuit. She went to the bathroom, filled the tub, and soaked for 40 minutes. She did not bother washing her hair or anything else. She just sat in the warm water, her pregnant belly like an island, and focused on her breathing. I am my father's daughter, she told herself. He lost it all at 29. He rebuilt. He spent 30 years creating something that no one could ever take away. I am 37 days from my own 29th birthday. I can hold on. The baby inside her made a slow, rolling turn. I know, Claire whispered. We're going to be fine. She said it with more confidence than she felt, but she said it. Wrapped in a towel on the cold floor, she called Sylvia. They filed for the annulment, she stated. They're using fraud as the reason. I expected as much, Sylvia replied. Her voice was completely calm. Claire was starting to depend on Sylvia for that. She was a steady presence in the middle of chaos. An annulment actually makes the trust transfer cleaner. It also blocks any claims they might make on marital property. But they are saying I lied? Yes, but it is a claim that will go nowhere. They must prove you hid the information on purpose, and we can easily prove you knew nothing about it. Sylvia paused. Let them do the work. It only strengthens our position. Those words reframed the entire situation for Claire from an attack into an opportunity. So, what should I do? Claire asked. You keep doing exactly what you're doing, Sylvia advised. I have a meeting with Clark Merritt next week. There's another part of your father's plan I need to discuss with you. It involves the Prescott shares specifically. What about them? Your father did not buy them just as an investment, Sylvia said. He owned them as a kind of insurance policy. Once you see his full design, you will understand his goal. And what was his goal? Sylvia paused. He made sure that if anyone came after you, you were already inside their gates. Donovan himself called her later that night. Not his attorney, it was him. Claire almost did not pick up. She let his name flash on the screen for 4 full rings before she answered. Claire? His voice was tired. It sounded genuinely exhausted, the way she remembered from early in their marriage, when he used to be honest with her. Then talk, she replied. I just want you to know this is not how I wanted things to go. Then how did you want them to go? The silence on the line was heavy. She could practically hear him grasping for the right words. I do not know, he admitted. I suppose I hoped you would find out about the trust and we could figure it out together. And how would that have ended? Claire pushed. We would talk, and then what would happen? He had no reply. Donovan, she said. Her voice was not angry. It was something else, quieter and much more final. You married me because of the trust. He did not try to deny it. She had been bracing herself for this talk. She had known it was coming. She expected it to crush her. Instead, it felt like a key turning in a lock. It was the sound of a chapter closing, making room for a new one to start. "Did you ever actually care for me?" she asked. She had to ask. She needed to hear if any of it was ever real. A very long pause followed. "I think I did," Donovan said at last. "And I think that is what made this whole thing so hard." He cared for her, but he still went along with his family's scheme that told her exactly how much she mattered. She was not worthless to him, but she was not worth fighting for. She knew she deserved better. "I will protect our child," Claire said. "No matter what, I will make sure she is safe. I truly hope you are a part of her life, but I will not wait around for you to figure it out." She ended the call. She walked into Renee's kitchen, leaned against the counter, and stared at the city lights. At some point, she realized, I let myself shrink. I kept making myself smaller to fit into a life that was never going to be mine. I told myself it was okay. I repeated it until I forgot who I was. That would not happen again. She picked up her phone and called Sylvia. "I'm ready," she said. "I'm ready for what comes next." Clark Merritt walked into Sylvia's office on a Tuesday. He carried a briefcase and had the look of a man who'd been waiting a long time. He was 60 years old, with precise clothes and careful words. He talked about huge amounts of money, like most people talk about a shopping list. He carried himself with the easy calm of a man who had handled massive sums for a long time. On the conference table, he laid out 3 documents in a precise row. After sitting, he faced Claire. He began, "Your father was a true visionary, not just in his accomplishments, but in his planning." He gestured to the first document. "This trust manages the investment portfolio, valued last month at $14.3 billion. It's spread across tech, real estate, private equity, and other long-term ventures designed to grow for decades." He pointed to the second. "As you know, the trust also holds 19% of Prescott Holdings. This was gathered over 11 years using 3 different companies. Every share is in a separate holding company, making it impossible to trace them back to Owen Whitmore." He moved to the third paper. "Here's what you're not aware of," he explained. 4 years before his death, your father contacted 2 other minority shareholders in Prescott Holdings. One is a retired investment banker holding 12%. Another 10% was held by a separate family trust. Both of these shareholders had been quietly opposing the Prescott leadership for years. Claire studied the papers, doing the math. 19% plus 12 plus 10, it added up to 41%. Her father had united them. He forged an alliance before he died and gave her the power to bring it to life. Clark explained that he left nothing to fate. For 3 years, he maintained correspondence with both parties. He shared just enough of his own history to earn their trust. He assured them that a time would come when his representative would get in touch. He even prepared for this very moment, Claire whispered. He foresaw every possible scenario he could think of, Clark agreed. Later, Claire found herself sitting in Sylvia's parking lot for 25 minutes with the engine off. She was too overwhelmed to drive. She had to absorb this new reality. Staring at the dashboard, her thoughts turned to her father. She pictured Owen Whitmore on his porch in the evening. He would be there with a newspaper, some tea, and a simple watch on his wrist. All that time, he was guarding this incredible secret. From his porch in Connecticut, he was steering a 30-year plan. He was always quiet, dependable, and resolute. She then remembered her graduation day. He had wrapped her in one of his rare, warm hugs. He had whispered to her, "Claire, you can do anything you set your mind to. Never forget that." At the time, she thought it was just a sweet, fatherly comment. She now realized he meant every single word. He had dedicated 30 years to proving it. He had built a reality where that promise was secured by both money and law. She decided to call her mother. "Did you know about the Prescott shares?" Claire asked. "No," Diane replied. "Sylvia told me this morning. I've been in the garden ever since." A small laugh escaped both of them, the kind that holds back tears. It was the shared laughter of 2 people grieving for the same man. "He was incredible," Claire said. "He truly was," Diane said softly. "He loved you more than anything, Claire. Everything he ever built, he did for you." Claire remained in her car until the tight feeling in her chest began to loosen. She then drove to Renee's house. That night, she made a call to Preston Vale, the Prescott family attorney. His contact information was on the annulment documents. His tone was wary, like a lawyer expecting trouble. "Miss Whitmore," he began, "I'm not sure it is appropriate for us to speak." "I am the director of a trust that owns 19% of Prescott Holdings," Claire stated plainly. "I have also connected with two other shareholders. Together, we command 41% of the company. I suggest you inform your clients of this before next month's board meeting." The line went so quiet she was sure she heard him blink. "There's one more thing," she added. "We have the original records from Garrett Prescott's first investment firm. I believe regulators would be very interested in them. Sylvia Holloway is prepared to release those files if we cannot find a suitable resolution." She used the very words Margaret Prescott had used to dismiss her. "I must consult with the family," Preston said. "You should," Claire replied. "You have 48 hours. With that, she hung up. Standing in the quiet kitchen, she felt like her old self for the first time since leaving the Prescott home. A new beginning finally felt real. A fresh start was precisely what she needed. The mistake was staying, but she had not realized it then. Annesley Prescott called her 3 weeks before her birthday. Claire was reluctant to pick up. However, Annesley had always been decent to her. She was never a friend, but she was never cruel. Claire answered the phone. "I learned about my mother," Annesley said without preamble. "I just wanted to tell you that I think it was wrong." "Why are you telling me this now?" Claire asked. A beat of silence passed. "Because I've watched my mother act this way my entire life and said nothing. She made you leave while pregnant, and I am..." Her voice faded. "I feel ashamed of my family." The admission seemed to cost her a great deal. "Thank you," Claire said. "That means a lot." Annesley offered to help with the baby, and Claire said she would keep it in mind. When she told Renee later, her friend commented, "I never understood what you saw in that family. I could see the appeal naturally, but I never trusted them." "Then why did you not say something?" "You were happy," Renee answered simply. "Or you seemed to be. I did not want to be the one to ruin it." Claire thought about that for a second. "I think a part of me always knew," she admitted. "Something did not feel right. I noticed the red flags but chose to look away." "Yes," Renee agreed with a nod. "We have all done that." "The worst part is admitting that I suspected it the whole time," Claire said. Renee placed a comforting hand on hers and said nothing, which was exactly what she needed. Life settled into a new pattern. Coffee with Renee started her mornings. Afternoons were filled with calls to Sylvia, and evenings were for long, slow walks through the neighborhood. Eleanor made each step a deliberate adventure. Claire immersed herself in the documents from Clark. She began to understand the scale of what her father had created. She examined every business, every alliance, and every investment. She was getting to know her inheritance as a whole world, not just a figure. She was retracing her father's steps. She was getting ready. The night labor started. She was on Renee's sofa eating crackers. For 3 days, nothing else had appealed to her. The television was on, but her eyes were fixed on a photo on the shelf. It was from their first year of college. They were at some party, long forgotten, laughing at a joke she could no longer recall. They looked so young, so free of worries. I was brave then because I had no idea what was coming. Now I know, and I'm still standing. That is its own kind of victory. Then the first contraction hit. The time was 3:47 in the morning. She looked down, then to the television, then back at the box of crackers. "Renee," she said quietly. Renee did not move. "Renee," she called, a little louder. She heard Renee sit bolt upright in bed. "What is it? What's going on?" "I think it is time," Claire said. The following 20 minutes were a blur of rehearsed actions that still felt sudden. Renee grabbed the hospital bag that had been packed for 3 weeks. Claire slipped on her shoes. As Renee arranged for a car, Claire called her mother. Then she dialed Sylvia, who had insisted on being notified. Sylvia picked up on the first ring. "It is happening," Claire told her. "I will see you at the hospital," Sylvia said and disconnected. Claire made a clear decision not to phone Donovan. She felt no regret about it. She would inform him later. His response would be his first true test as a parent. During labor, her entire world narrowed to the work her body was doing. Everything else faded away, the trust, the Prescotts, the 41% ownership. Her father's 30-year strategy, it all vanished. The only things that mattered were her own body, her breathing, the nurses, Renee's encouragement, and her mother's hand. Her whole focus was on bringing her daughter into the world. Eleanor was born at 7:42 in the morning. She weighed 7 pounds and 4 ounces, had dark hair and Owen Whitmore's nose. Claire saw it right away, that particular nose with that slight upward tilt. It was her father's nose on this new, tiny human. She held her daughter tightly in the bright hospital room. She whispered the name she had chosen months ago. She had picked it the same week she learned the truth about her father. Eleanor, she said gently. Eleanor Owen Whitmore. Not Prescott. Whitmore. Over by the window, Renee was shedding quiet, happy tears. Diane was holding a cup of coffee that was now cold. Near the door, Sylvia stood with her hands folded. For the first time, her face was an open book. She had the expression of a person who had waited a very long time to witness the end of a story, and now it had arrived. Donovan called 6 hours later. Eleanor had been weighed, and Claire was trying to get some rest after a meal. She watched his name light up her phone and simply let it ring. Her attorney would contact him in the morning. Sylvia Holloway could manage telling Donovan Prescott everything he needed to know. Sylvia would be far more effective than an exhausted new mother in a hospital bed. She watched Eleanor sleep. Her father would have absolutely adored her. She was sure of it. He would have loved her quietly and deeply, just like he had loved Claire. He would have shown her how to fill the bird feeder. They would have spent hours on the porch swing. A thought settled in her mind. I know what to do. A powerful sense of purpose washed over her. She closed her eyes and finally, after many weeks, fell into a deep sleep. 11 days later, on a chilly Tuesday, Claire turned 29. Eleanor had been up twice during the night, but was now asleep in her bassinet, cooing like a perfectly content newborn. In the kitchen, Renee was making coffee. Diane sat in a chair by the window, looking comfortable in her reading glasses, as if she'd been there for days. A text message from Sylvia arrived at 9:14 in the morning. It said, "The transfer is done. Congratulations, Claire. Your dad would be so proud." Then at 9:30, official papers came from Clark Merritt. They were formal and filled with details. $14.3 billion was now in accounts under Claire Whitmore's name alone, following the trust's rules. And there was Claire on Renee's couch, wearing a nursing shirt and the same yoga pants from 4 days ago. Her hair had not been washed since Sunday. She was busy feeding Eleanor, her focus intense as she learned this important new skill. She passed her phone to Renee without saying anything. Renee read the message, put the phone down, and her eyes went from Claire to the baby and back again. "So, what do you do now?" Renee asked. Claire thought, "I will follow the path my father set for me. I will finally be free." Her first action was to call Preston Vale. He answered on the first ring. He was clearly waiting for her call. His speed and careful voice revealed everything. "Miss Whitmore?" he said. She replied, "The assets from the trust were transferred this morning." "I assume you're already aware," she said. "Yes." "Good, then we can go over the terms I've prepared." She had spent days working on these conditions with Sylvia. She had refined them until they were perfect, with nothing extra. This was not about getting even. It was not about causing the most damage. All that mattered was Eleanor's future, a clean break, and being free of the Prescotts forever. "You can move forward with the annulment. I will not stand in the way," she said clearly. "I do not want to fight. My demands are simple. I get full legal custody of Eleanor. Donovan can have reasonable visitation if he chooses to be a father. A trust for Eleanor will be established, funded by Prescott Holdings. Sylvia Holloway has the specifics. I will also require a full accounting of all our marital assets and a strict non-disparagement agreement that every Prescott must sign." She paused for a moment. "Agree to this, and the files Sylvia Holloway has on Garrett Prescott's early business dealings will not go to the authorities. I will also hold off on using my shareholder power to demand an emergency board meeting next month." The line went completely quiet. "I need to speak with my clients," Preston finally said. "Of course," Claire responded. "You have 48 hours. Sylvia is sending the official terms over now." She ended the call and smiled down at Eleanor. The baby had finished eating and was just looking up at her, absorbing everything with her brand new eyes. Your grandpa would have liked that, Claire whispered. He appreciated efficiency. Preston Vale called back in just 36 hours. They were in a bigger hurry than she realized, which told her the files must be very damaging. They agreed to all of her terms. She signed the last of the papers on a Thursday morning at Sylvia's office. Sylvia observed from her desk while Clark Merritt stood by as a witness. Her daughter Eleanor sat in her carrier, taking in the room with curious eyes. When the final signature was done, Sylvia looked at her. Your father attempted to prepare for every possibility, she said, but I believe he would feel you managed this beyond his wildest hopes. Claire looked down at the signed papers. She imagined Owen on his porch, with his plain watch and the bird feeder, the result of 30 years of patient effort. He laid the groundwork, Claire replied. I just saw it through. She picked up Eleanor's carrier and got to her feet. For the first time in a long time, she felt light. It was not like a burden was gone. It was a feeling of perfect balance, as if the world was finally set right. She walked outside into the afternoon. The sky was overcast, but the air was mild. It looked like any other day, but it was not. She had $14 billion, a completed agreement, a daughter named Eleanor Owen Whitmore, and a future she would create for herself. She paused on the sidewalk and breathed it all in. Her father had given her real freedom. It was not just an idea, but a solid legal fact. She planned to embrace it. 10 days after the settlement on a Tuesday, she had a meeting at Prescott Holdings. It was her idea. She did not have to be there legally. The battle was won. She could have just walked away with the money. But she wanted this meeting for a reason beyond what lawyers could do. It was not about tactics or winning more. It was for her. She went by herself. She had on a new dark navy blazer. She wore the blazer with a simple white blouse. Her handbag was an old favorite, a practical bag that suited her perfectly. Around her wrist was Owen Whitmore's simple watch. Her mother found it and sent it to her after Eleanor was born. It fit her perfectly, as if it was made for her. She did not know why that small thing mattered so much. It just made her feel his presence. The Prescott Holdings lobby was a reflection of the family, marble floors, high ceilings, and art chosen to show off their wealth. She took the elevator to the 14th floor. In the boardroom, a huge table sat before windows with a city view. Margaret Prescott was at the head of the table. Garrett was on her left. Donovan sat slightly back, like a child told to be seen and not heard. Ainsley was not there. She had texted Claire earlier. I'm not coming. This is for the best. Good luck. Claire had replied, Thanks for your call. It meant something. Claire approached the table and selected a chair directly opposite Margaret. As she sat, Margaret's face shifted, a small but clear change in her expression. This was not the vulnerable Claire who they had dismissed from their home. This was a different woman entirely. It was as if Margaret was truly seeing her for the first time. Thank you for meeting me, Claire started. Of course, Margaret said, her voice stiff with forced politeness. There's one thing I want to say, Claire went on, before we go over any final items. She looked at Donovan. He looked back, meeting her eyes for the first time through all of this. She had wondered about this moment. The emotion she felt was surprisingly simple. It was pity. She did not pity him for what he did to her, but for the choice he made. She felt sorry for the life he would lead, molded by a family that taught him to marry for wealth, then do nothing as his wife was cast aside. I hope Eleanor has a father, if he chooses to be one, Claire said. I will not speak ill of the Prescotts to our daughter. She can meet his family when she is older. If that is her choice, I want you to understand that this was never about revenge. She paused. My father was wronged in his career when he was young. He could have been eaten by bitterness. Instead, he chose to create something new. He built it so successfully that what was done to him no longer had any power. The new thing he made healed the old injury. She looked directly at Garrett Prescott. And that is precisely what I will do, she said. Garrett Prescott looked back as if he finally understood who she was. His expression changed. It might have been respect, or it could have been the face of a man who just learned he had lost a game he did not even know he was playing. Margaret was the one who spoke. Your father was a remarkable man. Yes, he was, Claire said. He was more clever than we were, Margaret admitted. Her tone was empty of emotion, like someone stating a simple, hard truth dot model. Yes, Claire affirmed once more, he certainly was. A quiet moment settled between them. You remind me so much of him, Margaret remarked. The comment was not warm, but it was genuine. It was the most honest thing Margaret Prescott had told her in 3 years. Thank you, Claire replied. I appreciate that. She slid her chair back and rose to her feet. She accepted Garrett's handshake. She gave Margaret a polite nod. She met Donovan's eyes one last time. Take good care of her, she told him, her tone steady. When you're ready. Grabbing her bag, she walked to the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, she was finally alone. She let out a deep sigh that she felt she'd been holding for months, her father's watch a cool and constant comfort on her wrist. She lightly traced her fingers across the watch's surface. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. The elevator opened to the lively city, and she stepped forward into her new life. 6 weeks after her daughter's birth, Claire purchased a home. She had the funds to buy a mansion, a fact she was well aware of. That seemed like a choice she simply decided against. She possessed $14 billion and a type of freedom few people ever know. This liberty was not just an idea, it was a real and tangible thing that belonged only to her. She selected a white colonial home in Connecticut. It was situated on a peaceful street, with a garden out back and an old fence that needed mending. The porch looked west, ideal for watching the sunset, just as she had imagined for weeks while planning her fresh start. She chose the house mostly because of that porch. She began to move her things in on a Thursday. Her mother visited that evening to help set up the bed and put the kitchen in order. Their conversation was easy as they worked, and their shared silence was as comfortable as their words. Eleanor was sleeping peacefully in her carrier, which was set in the middle of the kitchen floor. They moved around her as if she were a tiny, glowing star. On Saturday, Renee arrived with a bottle of good wine for herself and some premium coffee for Claire. She also brought a houseplant with a guarantee that it could not be killed. You're not going to ruin this one, Renee announced, placing it on the kitchen counter. I did my homework. I have confirmation from multiple sources. Claire could not suppress a smile. I did manage to kill the last one. I'm very aware of that, Renee said. That is precisely why I did all the research. They sat on the back porch, enjoying the pleasant afternoon. Renee had her wine, Claire drank her coffee, and Eleanor snoozed on her mother's chest. They chatted about little things and important things, just as they had since they were 18 years old. Ainsley Prescott came by on Sunday afternoon. She nervously held a gift for Eleanor wrapped in yellow paper. She seemed to think Claire might turn her away. Claire opened the door widely. Please come inside, she said with a real smile. I just brewed some coffee. Ainsley appeared to relax, like someone who had been expecting to be rejected. Thank you, she said softly. They sat in the living room, surrounded by unpacked boxes. Claire knew this friendship would probably need time and a great deal of care to heal, but she had an endless supply of patience now, and that was a good feeling. A card from Donovan arrived in the mail that week. He wrote it himself on the thick cream-colored paper his family always used. The note said, I hope she inherits your kindness and your father's determination. I'm so sorry I was not the man that either of you deserved. Claire read his words only once, then she put the card in a box she had labeled Eleanor. The box was meant for things that were part of Eleanor's story, for her daughter to see when she was old enough to hear the whole truth, the complete truth. She wanted her daughter to have the real version, not some simplified tale. Claire was certain Eleanor had a right to know it all. In quiet times, she had started to think about the lessons she would one day share with her daughter. They were not grand philosophies, but simple truths she had learned over the last difficult months. She would tell Eleanor, your grandfather built an entire world for you so that you would never have to live in fear. So you would never feel that someone else controlled your life. He did not build it from anger, though he had every right to be angry. He built it from love, the kind of love that sits on a porch at twilight, that fills a bird feeder every Sunday, and that tells a little girl she is capable of absolutely anything. She would also tell her, some people will want you to be like them. Some people will come to you with a bright smile, but you must always trust what they do more than what they say. The true story is always found in the difference between their promises and their actions. She would say, the hardest part was not leaving a huge house with just one bag. The most challenging thing was knowing the truth all that time and choosing to ignore it. It is hard work to face difficult truths. You can start practicing when you're young. I wish I did. She would tell her daughter, we are Whitmores. Your great grandfather built that name with 30 years of honest work and quiet decency. You were born with it. It is not a burden for you to carry, it is a gift. On a Thursday evening in late October, the air was crisp and hinted at the coming autumn. The light had that golden Connecticut look that makes everything feel magical. Claire took Eleanor out to the back porch. She sat in a heavy wooden chair she had bought for these very moments, a chair that was built to last a lifetime. She put her father's watch on the small table beside her. Eleanor was captivated by the light, her face full of wonder. It was the intense focus of a baby seeing light's beauty and understanding that beauty is everywhere. Claire looked at the garden, the fence in need of repair, and the sky as it shifted from gold to orange to a soft evening blue. She thought of her father, she thought of the company he founded, the simple things he cherished, and his firm refusal to let anyone take those things from him or from her. She thought of the betrayal at age 29, the 15 years he spent rebuilding, and the 30 years of his careful planning. She recalled the plain watch he wore through all of it. He never did it for the power. She understood that now with perfect clarity. He did it to give her an exit. It was a door that was always unlocked, a door that no one could ever close. She could walk through it at any moment and claim what he had always wanted for her. Total independence. And now she had finally gone through it. This was her freedom win, as Sylvia would say. It was the only victory that had ever really mattered. She was no longer in the Prescott's dining room. She was not driving away from a life she once thought she desired. She was not on a pull-out couch, staring at the ceiling, thinking about 3 years of warnings she had ignored. She was on her own porch, in her own chair, with her father's watch and her baby. They were bathed in the October light of Connecticut as it softened from gold to amber and then to blue. She reflected on what she had slowly come to understand over the last few months. The truth had revealed itself in quiet moments while feeding her baby and learning what her father had really built. The door to her prison had been unlocked the entire time. She'd been her own guard. She spent so much effort trying to improve the cage, making herself smaller to fit inside it, and making excuses to call that cage a home, that she never even tried the door. The door was always open. She just had to stop trying to fix the walls and start walking towards it. She looked down at Eleanor, who was still mesmerized by the last rays of the sun. As the sky grew darker, the garden became quiet. It was the kind of peaceful moment her father had always loved the most, that quiet time between the end of something and the start of something new. Your grandfather cherished this time of day, Claire said gently. He would sit right here and just watch the colors change. Just that. Nothing else was needed. Eleanor made a small, curious sound. I think he knew something that I'm just now starting to understand, Claire continued. The small normal moments are not just the breaks between the big things. They are the big things. The porch at sunset, the bird feeder on Sunday, this simple watch. She picked up her father's watch from the table, feeling its solidness in her hand. It was simple and true, a watch that did its job without any fuss. She placed it back on the table. He would have adored you, she whispered to Eleanor. He would have loved you more than anything. She said it without the sharp pain she had held for so long. It was not said without love. In fact, she said it with so much love that there was no space left for the pain. There was only love, the evening sky, and a new beginning with a story that had not been written yet. We're going to be all right, she said. This was different from when she said it in Renee's bathroom, hoping to convince herself. This time she said it because it was true. All the proof was right there. His 30 years of hard work made this quiet moment possible. In the last few months, she had proven to herself that they would be more than just fine. As the daylight disappeared, the sky turned into a soft, deep black, dotted with the first stars. Eleanor slept peacefully on her mother's chest, a warm and comforting weight. Claire sat on the porch, taking it all in. She had $14 billion, a legal triumph, and a daughter named Eleanor Owen Whitmore. She had a White House in Connecticut with a porch that faced west. A best friend came over for coffee on Saturdays. Her mother, who lived nearby, called her every morning. She had a lawyer who protected her father's trust for 4 years without ever backing down. This was a new chapter, and she was the only one holding the pen. For the first time she could remember, she felt a deep, peaceful certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. This life was not chosen for her. She had chosen it herself. She finally walked through the door her father had spent 3 decades building. Now, on the other side, her whole life stretched out before her, and she needed no one's approval to live it. As the night settled around her, she stayed right there. Owen Whitmore's daughter sat on her own porch, her sleeping baby on her chest, feeling completely free, right where she decided to be. A brief message from us. Our team has poured our hearts into creating these stories to share valuable lessons and true emotion with you. We have worked carefully on every detail of this story to bring you hope, to show you that your feelings matter, and to remind you that your own story is not over, no matter what you're going through.